Hello and welcome back to this tutorial on animating shapes. In this lesson, we're going to look at the classic bouncing ball animation. So let's get started. Okay, so as always, we've got some starter code and let's just start it and see what happens. We have this peachy looking circle drawn right in the middle of the screen. And it is really important to look at the code that's there, the starter code, and understand what it's doing. So let's take a look. All right, we have the first line which does set canvas size, sets the canvas to 640 pixels wide, 360 pixels high. We have this fill command which sets the color of any subsequent shapes we draw to that color. We are assigning the value 320 into the variable x, and we're assigning the value 180 into the value y. And then we've got this forever loop which clears the screen with the background 0, 0, 0. That means draw a big black rectangle over everything. Draw the circle with its center at x and y, which is 320, 180, with a radius of 30, and then sleep. And then we go and repeat this. So we just do these over and over. Clear the screen, draw the circle, sleep. Clear the screen, draw the circle, sleep. And so even though the ball's not moving, this is actually animating. The screen's being cleared, the ball's being redrawn. Now I want to have the ball moving and then bouncing off the wall. So let's break that down. And this is a good way to approach those problems. The first thing we want to do is get the ball moving. So we know how to do this. We've done this before. We need to change the position of the x and y variables. So let's just do that. Let's before we draw the circle, let's update them. So let's just say x equals x plus 1. And remember, this command takes what's on the right-hand side and stores it in what's on the left-hand side. So we take x plus 1, and if x is currently 320, we add 1 to it to get 321, and then we overwrite x. We store that back in there, so x now becomes 321. It's not a mathematical equation because that wouldn't make sense. X does not equal x plus 1. This means x gets the value of whatever x currently is plus 1. And then we say y equals y plus 1 as well. And if we run that now, the ball should be moving. Great. Okay, now it's gone off the screen. When it goes off the screen, we want it to come back down. We want it to like bounce off the wall. So that means we need to change how much we're increasing y by. Instead of increasing y by 1, we want to start decreasing y. So if we want to change something, that's a good indication it should be stored in a variable. So let's create a variable for the x direction. And I might just call it x_dir, and we'll set that to 1, and y_dir will also set that to 1, and then we can change our code here. Instead of saying x equals x plus 1, we say x equals x plus the x direction, and y equals y plus the y direction. And because these variables both hold the value 1, this shouldn't change our program. It should just do what it did before. Great. But now we have those variables so we can change them. So we could do an if statement here and check if the ball's gone off the screen. Now how do we know if the ball's gone off the screen? Well, let's just draw our canvas here. I need a blue color. Yep, blue color looks good. Let's just draw our canvas here. Our ball starts in the middle. It's going up and up and up and up. Now when it gets to this position here, the center of the circle has its y position at 360 pixels, or technically 359, because remember it goes from 0 to 359. That's the range. That's actually 360 pixels because you're including 0. So if it's going to go past the top of the screen, then the center of the circle needs to be past the edge here by the radius of the circle. And if you remember, the radius of the circle was 30. So I need to check if the ball is at past the top, so past 359, so is equal to 360 plus 30, so is equal to 390. Now, I could do my check here and say, if y is greater than, or is equal to 390, then set the y direction equal to -1. So we change the y direction so it starts coming down. But I'm worried about this equals because it has to be exactly 390. And what if I changed this x direction to be like a different value, like 7? It might go past 390, not exactly hit it. So I'm better off saying, is it greater than or equal to? It's just a safer way to code this. If y is greater than or equal to 390, then change it so it starts coming back down the screen. Okay. All right, yeah, let's try that. Okay. And then, yeah, I think this should work. Let's see what happens. Let's run this and, hey! Now, I noticed a little problem here. The ball went completely off the screen, didn't it, before it started coming back down. I actually made a mistake. I want the ball to be hitting down here. So it shouldn't be greater than 360 pixels. It should be, the center of the circle should be 30 pixels less than this, so -30. So if y is greater than or equal to, and I'm better off using these variables. Remember, the height of the screen is set to 360 minus the 30, which is the radius. And again, I'm using 30 twice here, so if I was to change the radius of the circle, I would have to change this as well. And so this is another good example of where it's going to be good to use a variable. So I'm going to actually create one called radius equals 30. And then instead of saying -30, I can say minus the radius, and I can draw the circle here with a radius of radius. Now, if I want to change the radius of the circle to say 25, I can just update it here to 25 and my code will still work. So now, here we go. See it bouncing off the screen there. But now, it's gone to the right and it's just kept on going. So, that is not ideal either, but let me start it again. Boom, and now, okay. So how do you think I should check to see if it's gone past the right edge of the screen? Pause the video and see if you can code that up. All right, I'm assuming you've had a go at that. Now it's very similar, except now we want the circle to bounce whenever the ball is touching the right edge, which means that the center of the circle must be less than the width by the radius of the circle. So it must be less than the width. It's got to be greater than the width minus the radius of the circle. So let's try and code that up. All right, so and do another if statement. If x is greater than or equal to the width of the screen minus the radius, put my colon, then we're going to change the x direction. X dir would equal -1. Okay, let's start that. Boom, boom, great. All right, now you can see the problem. It's gone off the bottom of the screen. We also need to check for the left edge. So again, now is your chance. Try and code this up by yourself. All right, I'm assuming you've had a go at that. I'm just going to code it up and it's going to be very similar. So I might put the check for the bottom of the screen next to this check because it's also checking the y. So if the y variable, now how do I know if it's gone off the bottom of the screen or it's hit the bottom? It's when the radius of the circle is above 0, or yeah, the bottom of the screen is 0 and I want it to be below the radius of the circle. So if y is less than the radius of the circle, then it's hit the edge, so I want it to bounce. So if that's the case, then I want to put the y dir back to 1 because it would have been coming down. So let's see if that works. Boom, boom, and boom. Yep, excellent. Hit the top again. Now just the left edge is the last thing we need to do. And so the same thing, I want to check if the x now, if it's less than the radius of the circle, then it has hit the left edge. So I just say, if x is less than the radius of the circle, put my colon, and then if that's true, the x-dir has to be equal to 1. I want to start sending it back the other way. And now, here we have it. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Yes. Very, very cool. I'm enjoying that a lot. All right, so one last thing I want to do is actually change the color of the circle every time it hits a wall. All right, so what I can do is, before I draw the circle, I can set the fill color to an RG and a B value. Now these RG and B are variable names, but I haven't created any variables yet. So at the top, I could just say R equals 255, G equals 255, and B equals 255. And now we have a white circle. And then I don't even need this fill command up here anymore because I'm setting the fill every time through the loop before I draw the circle. So now I'll have a white circle. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. But now when it hits the wall, and remember, when it's hitting the wall is whenever these conditions are true. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh, and I deleted some code accidentally. Did I? No, it's all there. I thought I deleted some code for a minute, but I didn't. So if y is greater than or equal to the height minus the radius, I should really add some comments, isn't I? So check if the ball hits the top. And if it does hit the top, then I want to choose some colors. So I want to say red equals, and I could set it to like just a certain value, G equals 0 and B equals 10. And then what that will do is just set it to a different color when I hit the top. There we go. But I want to actually set it to a random color. So remember from our last lesson, if we want to use the randint function, we need to import the randint function from the random library. And we do that with the command from random. So that means from the random library, import the randint function. And now I can set this at the start to a random integer between 0 and 255. I can set green to a random integer between 0 and 255. And I can set blue to a random integer between 0 and 255. So I'm going to copy those 3 lines, and then every time I hit a wall, I'm going to set these values. Now, see when I copied these, they've been unindented, but I want it to be part of the if statement. So if the ball has hit the top of the screen, then I want these to happen. So I need to indent these to the same level as that command. So then now all these 4 lines are a block of code, and this block of code only happens if the ball hits the top of the canvas. And then what I can do now is just copy these 3 lines and do the same if if it's hit the bottom. Check if the ball hits the bottom, and then I can do the same here. Check if the ball hits the right edge, and if it does, then set the color to random bit, and then I'll put my comment here. Check if the ball hits the left edge, and if it does, then I am going to paste these in. Now you may have noticed something here, that I've got the same bit of code 1, 2, 3, 4, and in fact up the top here 5 times. Now whenever you see something like that, you should think, is there a better way? And there probably is. I could probably create what's called a function which holds this code and then just call the function name. Now don't worry too much about that. For the moment, we're just going to leave that as it is. But just think, whenever you're repeating code, there's probably a better way. So later on, when you develop more skills, you might write your own function that just chooses random colors and that would be more succinct. But for now, this is going to do nicely. Okay, and I think we're done now. Let's just test it out. Here we go. Start. Boom. Yep, random color, random color, random color. Awesome. Cool. Now, I really probably should almost stop, but there's one other thing I want to do, and that is set the ball off in a random motion. So instead of it just going always up one and across one to start, let's pick a random number for it to start at. Because at the moment we're setting the x-dir to 1 and the y-dir to 1. But I could set the x-dir to 2 and the y-dir to -1, and it would start going in a different direction. There we go. But notice when I'm hitting the edge, it's setting it back to -1. So what I could do is something like this. Let's say, now, well, there is another cool function. You know the rand_int function, it picks values between whatever you specify. So if I say rand_int between 1 and 10, then I get a random number that could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, so on, all the way up to could be 10. But I don't always want a whole number here. Maybe I want the ball to just go up slightly, like 0.5, rather than a whole step. So I could get numbers that aren't integers. And there is another function called uniform that's part of the random library. And I could specify it to be like between -3 and +3. And there I'm getting what they call floating point numbers, or numbers with decimal points. So I could get like -2.23, or I could get 1.765. So, but I get any number between there. So that could be really useful here. So from random import rand_int, I can put comma, uniform, and now from that random library, I'm importing two functions, the rand_int and the uniform. And then the x direction, I could set it to be uniform between -3 and 3. And the same here for the y direction, uniform between -3 and 3. And then it's going to start in a random direction. Here we go. Yeah, look at that. But as soon as it hits the wall, here, what is happening, I'm changing the y-dir equal to -1. Now, a little programming trick here is what I could do is I could change it to be whatever the y direction currently is, because if I've chosen a random number, it might be -2 or -2.2. And so if I times that by -1, it will change the sign of it. So if it was -2.2 and I times it by -1, it will become +2.2. And same thing for all of these. I can just say equals y_dir times -1. And here I can say x_dir equals x_dir times -1. Neat little math trick. And instead of setting x_dir to 1, I set it to x_dir times -1. So whenever I multiply anything by -1, if it was a negative, it becomes a positive. If it was a positive, it becomes a negative, but the value stays the same. So let's just look at that again. So say I had a value of 2.2. When I multiply that by -1, it equals -2.2. And if I had a value of -2.2 at the start and I minus it by -1, a negative times a negative is a positive, so I'd end up with +2.2. So I've changed the direction from a minus to a positive, and if it was a positive, I've changed it to a negative. So that's a really good trick to remember. So now let's try it. Here we go. And yeah, so the initial speed is kept the same, and if I stop it and start it again, I'll get a different speed. Yeah, see, now that one was much slower. And now stop and start. Oh, that one's almost straight up. There you go. Stop and start. Yeah, cool. This is awesome. Love this. I hope you're enjoying it too. That's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.